The Second World War was not fought only on beaches, in trenches, or in the skies above burning cities. While soldiers faced death with rifles and tanks, another war was unfolding in silence. A hidden war of laboratories, underground facilities, locked hangars, and classified documents stamped top secret. This was a war of ideas, fear, desperation, and innovation. A war where scientists, engineers, and military strategists raced against time to build weapons so secret that many of them were never meant to be seen by the public. Some worked, some failed catastrophically, some were so terrifying that even their creators hesitated to use them. This video reveals that hidden battlefield. In this video, you will discover real secret weapons of World War II, projects surrounded by mystery, desperation, and ambition, weapons designed to change the course of history, and in some cases almost did. These are not myths. These are documented programs, real experiments, and testimonies from those who worked on them or encountered their effects. Some were deployed in combat. Others were abandoned, buried, or erased from official records for decades. If you enjoy these war journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought in the comments below. This helps others find their way here too. For now, let's begin our journey. As the war dragged on and casualties mounted, the rules of warfare began to bend. Moral limits were tested, technology advanced at terrifying speed, and behind closed doors, nations gambled everything on weapons that promised absolute superiority. One of the most feared secret weapons emerged not from a factory floor, but from the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. German U-boats had already turned the sea into a graveyard for Allied convoys, but by 1943, the tide was turning. Allied radar, sonar, and air patrols were sinking submarines at an alarming rate. Desperate to regain control, Nazi engineers introduced a revolutionary device, the acoustic homing torpedo, known as the G7E T5, nicknamed Zaunkönig. Unlike conventional torpedoes, this weapon could listen. It followed the sound of ship propellers, adjusting its course in real time. Sailors who survived its attacks described the horror of hearing a torpedo change direction beneath their ship, as if it were alive. Allied escorts were caught completely off guard. Several destroyers were sunk before countermeasures were developed. The psychological impact was immediate. The sea itself no longer felt predictable. At the same time, deep within Britain, another silent weapon was being perfected, one that didn't explode, burn, or poison. It deceived. Radar countermeasures, particularly window, were strips of aluminum foil dropped from bombers to confuse German radar. When first used during Operation Gomorrah in 1943, German radar screens lit up with phantom aircraft. The Luftwaffe defenses were paralyzed. Entire cities burned while German commanders struggled to understand what they were seeing. This was a turning point. Technology had begun to outthink human perception. But perhaps no secret weapon symbolized ambition more than Germany's V-weapons program. While the V-1 flying bomb terrorized London with its unmistakable engine sound, the V-2 rocket represented something entirely new. It was the world's first long-range ballistic missile, traveling faster than the speed of sound. There was no warning, no defense. Survivors described explosions arriving without noise. The explosion came before the sound. Built using forced labor under horrific conditions, the V-2 was as much a weapon of terror as it was a technological leap. It killed thousands, yet militarily it failed to change the outcome of the war. But its legacy would shape the Cold War, space exploration, and nuclear delivery systems for decades to come. Across the Atlantic, the United States was pursuing secrecy on a scale never before attempted. The Manhattan Project was not just a weapons program, it was a city-sized secret. Over 130,000 people worked on the project, yet most had no idea what they were building. Scientists like Oppenheimer, Fermi, and Teller raced to harness atomic energy, unsure if the weapon they were creating would even work, or if it might ignite the atmosphere. When the first atomic bomb was tested in the New Mexico desert in July 1945, witnesses described the explosion as something beyond human comprehension. A light brighter than the sun, a shock wave that flattened structures miles away. Several scientists later admitted they feared they had unleashed something humanity might never control. But atomic weapons were only part of the secret arsenal.
In occupied Europe, resistance fighters whispered about strange German weapons being tested at night. Long-range artillery capable of firing across borders. One such weapon was the V3 supergun, designed to bombard London from the coast of France using a series of explosive charges along the barrel. Though largely destroyed before becoming operational, its concept foreshadowed modern artillery and missile systems. Meanwhile, in the skies, engineers experimented with aircraft that looked like they belonged in science fiction. Germany's Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter, was faster than any Allied plane. Pilots described it as untouchable, yet poor strategic decisions and limited fuel prevented it from reaching its full potential. Even more radical was the Horten Ho 229, a flying wing aircraft made of wood and charcoal-based materials to reduce radar visibility. Modern tests suggest it may have been one of the earliest attempts at stealth technology, decades before stealth became a military doctrine. Not all secret weapons were mechanical. Biological and chemical warfare programs pushed ethical boundaries to their limits. Japan's Unit 731 conducted horrific human experiments under the guise of medical research. Survivors' testimonies describe weapons designed to spread plague, cholera, and anthrax. Though largely covered up after the war, these programs represented some of the darkest chapters in military history. Fear itself became a weapon. Even deception was weaponized. Allied forces built inflatable tanks, fake airfields, and entire ghost armies to mislead German intelligence. Operation Fortitude convinced Hitler that the D-Day landings would occur at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. This deception, supported by double agents and fake radio traffic, delayed German reinforcements at a critical moment, saving countless lives. As the war progressed, secrecy became as valuable as firepower. Whoever controlled information controlled the battlefield. Yet for every successful secret weapon, there were dozens of failures. Projects abandoned due to cost, impracticality, or sheer madness. Engineers pushed beyond what was technologically possible at the time, driven by pressure from leaders who demanded miracles. By 1945, the world stood on the edge of a new era. The weapons born in secrecy during World War II would shape every conflict that followed. Missiles, jets, nuclear arms, electronic warfare, all traced their roots back to this hidden arms race. And many of these weapons remained classified for decades. Some are still surrounded by mystery today. By the middle years of World War II, the conflict had transformed into a war of survival. Nations were no longer searching for incremental advantages, they were searching for miracles. Laboratories became battlefields. Scientists worked under relentless pressure, often knowing that failure could mean defeat, imprisonment, or death. Out of this atmosphere of urgency emerged some of the most unconventional and disturbing weapons ever conceived. One of the strangest Allied projects began with an idea that sounded almost absurd, using animals as weapons. In the United States, psychologist B.F. Skinner led Project Pigeon, an experimental guidance system that trained pigeons to steer bombs toward enemy ships. Inside the nose of the weapon, pigeons pecked at images of targets, correcting the bomb's trajectory in real time. Tests showed surprising accuracy. Military observers were both impressed and unsettled. In the end, the project was abandoned, not because it failed, but because decision-makers could not fully trust an animal to guide a weapon of war. The Soviet Union explored similarly unconventional methods. Anti-tank dogs, trained to run beneath enemy vehicles carrying explosives, were deployed on the Eastern Front. In reality, many of these dogs panicked under fire or ran back towards Soviet lines with catastrophic results. Soldiers who witnessed these attacks described them as chaotic, tragic, and deeply unsettling, a reminder that desperation often overrides ethics. Germany, facing relentless bombing and a collapsing front, invested heavily in weapons designed to terrorize rather than tactically defeat the enemy. Among these was the Schwere Gustav, a colossal railway gun capable of firing shells weighing over 7 tons. Built primarily for the siege of Sevastopol, the weapon required thousands of men to operate and days to prepare. When it fired, the earth itself seemed to shake. While its destructive power was undeniable, its logistical burden rendered it impractical. It was a symbol of excess, enormous power with limited strategic value. Far more sinister were Germany's chemical warfare advances, even though these weapons were never used on the battlefield. Nazi scientists stockpiled nerve agents such as taboon and sarin, substances so deadly that a single drop could kill within minutes. Allied intelligence remained largely unaware of the scale of this threat. Historians later concluded that fear of retaliation and uncertainty about Allied capabilities likely prevented their use. The world came dangerously close to chemical apocalypse without ever realizing it. In occupied Poland and Manchuria, the war took an even darker turn. Japan's biological weapons program was conducted in near total secrecy. Survivors and post-war investigations revealed chilling experiments involving frostbite, vivisection, and disease exposure. Weapons were designed to disperse pathogens using ceramic bombs filled with infected fleas. Some Japanese officers later admitted these weapons were tested in real-world conditions against civilian populations. The scale of human suffering remained hidden for decades, buried under political deals and Cold War priorities. While some weapons focused on destruction, others aimed at control. The Allies recognized that information could be as lethal as explosives. Military psychological warfare units produced fake newspapers, radio broadcasts, and forged documents to demoralize enemy troops. German soldiers reported hearing radio messages that seemed to come from their own commanders, spreading confusion and doubt. Morale collapsed not under bombs, but under uncertainty.
One of the most successful secret weapons was silence itself. British intelligence developed ultra-quiet well-rod pistols designed for assassinations behind enemy lines. With an integrated suppressor and minimal mechanical noise, the well-rod became a favorite of resistance fighters and special operations units. Veterans recalled missions where a single muted shot determined whether an operation succeeded or failed. At sea, engineers explored radical new approaches to naval warfare. The British developed human torpedoes, piloted by divers who rode the weapon directly toward enemy ships. Italian forces used similar devices, known as maiali, to devastating effect in harbors like Alexandria. Survivors described these missions as near suicidal, requiring extraordinary calm under extreme pressure. Many operators never returned. Germany responded with its own underwater innovations, including mini submarines such as the Biber and Seehund. Built quickly and often poorly, these vessels were sent into combat with minimally trained crews. Loss rates were horrific, yet the concept itself foreshadowed modern special naval operations. In the air, engineers pursued speed and altitude as the ultimate defenses. Experimental rocket-powered aircraft like the Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet stunned Allied pilots. Capable of incredible acceleration, the Comet could intercept bombers with ease, but its volatile fuel caused frequent explosions. Many pilots died during takeoff or landing. One Luftwaffe officer later remarked that flying the Comet was more dangerous than fighting the enemy. Across the Channel, British engineers worked on weapons designed not for battlefields, but for infrastructure collapse. Operation Chastise, carried out using bouncing bombs, targeted German dams. The weapon itself was highly specialized, skipping across water before detonating underwater. The resulting floods devastated industrial regions and killed thousands. Though controversial, the operation demonstrated how precision weapons could cripple entire economies. Some projects existed entirely in theory, plans so extreme they were never built. Allied intelligence uncovered German concepts for orbital bombardment platforms and intercontinental missiles. While technologically impossible at the time, these ideas revealed how far military imagination had stretched. As the war entered its final phase, secrecy became absolute. Files were destroyed, scientists were evacuated or captured, entire research facilities vanished. In the chaos of surrender and occupation, many secret weapons programs disappeared into the shadows. Yet their influence did not vanish. The scientists behind these weapons were absorbed into new superpowers. Operation Paperclip brought German engineers to the United States, where their knowledge shaped missiles, jets, and space exploration. The Soviet Union conducted similar programs. The Cold War arsenal was built on the foundation laid in World War II's darkest laboratories. The weapons of desperation had outlived the war that created them, and some of their consequences would only be felt decades later. By 1943, the Second World War had reached a critical threshold. Industrial output was peaking, casualties were staggering, and commanders on all sides understood that traditional tactics alone would not deliver victory. What followed was the selective unveiling of secret weapons, not experimental fantasies, but technologies refined enough to be unleashed with devastating effect. One of the most decisive secret advantages belonged to the Allies, hidden not in a factory, but in mathematics. Code breaking, particularly at Bletchley Park, became one of the most powerful weapons of the war. The German Enigma and Lorenz cipher machines were believed to be unbreakable. Yet through a combination of captured material, mathematical brilliance, and early computing machines like the Bombay and Colossus, Allied intelligence gained access to enemy communications on a massive scale. Naval convoys rerouted around U-boat wolf packs before attacks even began. Air raids were redirected to exploit gaps in German defenses. Entire operations were shaped by information the enemy never knew was compromised. Veterans later stated that Enigma decryption likely shortened the war by years, saving millions of lives. It was a secret so critical that its existence remained classified long after peace was declared. In the skies, radar matured from a defensive novelty into a strategic weapon. British early warning radar stations provided precious minutes of preparation during the Battle of Britain. But by mid-war, radar-guided night fighters and anti-aircraft systems turned the night sky into a lethal trap. German pilots spoke of unseen enemies appearing out of darkness with uncanny precision. The war for air superiority had become a war of electrons. At sea, the tide of the Atlantic battle finally turned through a combination of technologies. High-frequency direction finding, known as HFDUF, allowed Allied forces to locate U-boats by tracing their radio transmissions. Improved sonar, radar-equipped aircraft, and long-range patrol planes closed the gaps U-boats once exploited. The ocean, once a hunter's domain, became a killing field for submarines. On land, one of the most impactful yet overlooked secret weapons was logistics itself. The Allies mastered rapid deployment using innovations like the Mulberry Harbors, portable artificial ports constructed after the D-Day landings. Without them, the invasion of Normandy might have collapsed under supply shortages. These massive structures were engineered in secrecy and assembled under fire, proving that engineering could be as decisive as firepower.
Equally transformative was the development of proximity fuses. These small electronic devices detonated artillery shells when they came close to a target, rather than on impact. In air defense, proximity fuses turned flak barrages into lethal clouds. German pilots described flying through invisible walls of explosions. In the Pacific, they were instrumental in countering Japanese kamikaze attacks. Once introduced, commanders refused to operate without them. In the realm of armor warfare, the Allies employed specialized vehicles known as Hobart's funnies during the Normandy invasion. Flail tanks cleared mines, bridge layers crossed obstacles, amphibious tanks swam ashore under fire. These bizarre-looking machines were the result of intense experimentation and secrecy. German defenders, unprepared for such equipment, were overwhelmed in critical sectors. Germany, despite its worsening position, continued to introduce revolutionary technology. The Panzerfaust, a simple, disposable anti-tank weapon, gave infantry unprecedented power. Its effectiveness reshaped urban combat, forcing Allied tank crews to rethink tactics. Even today, its design influences modern shoulder-fired weapons. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the United States faced a different kind of technological challenge. Japanese defenses were deeply entrenched, and traditional assaults resulted in horrific casualties. The solution came through improved amphibious warfare technology, including specialized landing craft and flame weapons. Flamethrowers, though terrifying, were used to clear bunkers that resisted all other methods. Veterans' accounts reveal the psychological toll on both users and victims of these weapons. One of the most controversial secret weapons was strategic bombing technology itself. Advances in bomb sights, such as the Norden bomb sight, promised unprecedented accuracy. Though later assessments questioned its effectiveness under combat conditions, the belief in precision bombing shaped Allied doctrine and justified massive air campaigns that devastated industrial centers. As the war neared its end, one weapon stood above all others in secrecy and consequence. The atomic bomb was no longer theoretical, it was real. Preparations were underway to use it against Japan, even as planners estimated millions of casualties in a conventional invasion. The bomb was seen as both an end to war and the beginning of a terrifying new age. Yet secrecy remained absolute. Many military leaders learned of the atomic program only days before its use. Pilots were briefed in vague terms. Even the crews who dropped the bombs did not fully understand what they carried. When Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed, the world changed forever. But World War II's secret weapons did not disappear with surrender ceremonies and peace treaties. They became the foundation of modern warfare. Missiles replaced artillery, jets replaced propellers, information replaced numbers. The hidden war had become the new normal. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, the world believed the war was over. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, and nations turned their attention to rebuilding. But beneath the surface, the true aftermath of World War II was only beginning. The war's most powerful weapons did not disappear. They were hidden, absorbed, repurposed, and in many cases, perfected. The secrets forged in wartime laboratories would quietly shape the second half of the 20th century and beyond. As Allied forces advanced into defeated Germany and occupied Japan, a new kind of battle unfolded. It was a race for knowledge. Factories were seized, blueprints were confiscated, scientists were interrogated, recruited, or disappeared into classified programs. The war for territory had ended, but the war for technological dominance had just begun. One of the most consequential operations was Operation Paperclip. Hundreds of German scientists, engineers, and technicians, many of whom had worked on secret weapons programs, were transported to the United States. Their pasts were often overlooked or deliberately erased. What mattered was what they knew. Rocket specialists who once built V-2 missiles now worked on American ballistic missile programs, and eventually the Apollo moon landings. The path from wartime terror weapon to the Apollo moon landings ran through classified files few civilians would ever see. The Soviet Union conducted similar operations. Entire research teams were relocated east. Jet engines, radar systems, and missile designs were studied and replicated. The Cold War arsenal was not born from scratch. It was inherited from the hidden war of World War II. Some weapons never left the shadows. Vast archives remained sealed for decades. Biological warfare research, chemical stockpiles, and psychological operations were buried under layers of classification. Survivors of human experimentation were silenced. Records were destroyed. Justice, in many cases, was sacrificed for strategic advantage. The ethical consequences were profound. Scientists who had crossed moral boundaries during the war now found themselves celebrated as pioneers of modern technology. Their work powered jets, guided missiles, and shaped global military doctrine. The line between genius and atrocity became dangerously thin. In military doctrine, secrecy itself became institutionalized. Special access programs, black budgets, and compartmentalized research became standard. Nations learned that the most powerful weapons were often those the enemy did not know existed. Surprise, deception, and technological shock became core principles of modern warfare.
Many concepts first explored during World War II matured into defining features of modern conflict. Stealth technology, once experimental wood and carbon aircraft, evolved into radar-evading bombers. Electronic warfare, born from radar deception and jamming, now dominates battlefields. Drones, guided munitions, and cyber warfare all trace their philosophical roots back to that hidden arms race. Even nuclear weapons, though rarely used since 1945, remain the ultimate legacy of secrecy. Entire strategies, deterrence, mutually assured destruction, second strike capability exist because of a weapon born in absolute silence. Generations have lived under its shadow without ever seeing it deployed again. Yet not all legacies are technological. The psychological impact of secret weapons altered how wars are perceived. Civilians learned that destruction could arrive without warning, without sound, without defense. Soldiers learned that unseen forces, radar, intelligence, encrypted messages could decide their fate long before the first shot was fired. World War II taught humanity a dangerous lesson. Innovation accelerates fastest when survival is at stake, and once unleashed, that innovation cannot be contained. Even today, historians continue to uncover fragments of classified projects. Declassified files reveal weapons that almost existed, decisions that narrowly avoided catastrophe, and technologies decades ahead of their time. What we know is likely only a fraction of what was truly developed. The hidden war never truly ended. It evolved. And the weapons born in secrecy during World War II continue to shape the conflicts of our modern world, silently, invisibly, and relentlessly. If you watched this documentary until the end, leave a comment telling us what you thought about these secret weapons, and include the keyword Shadow War so we know you stayed with us until the final moment. Don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching the next videos that are appearing on your screen right now, because there are still many untold stories hidden in the shadows of history. The war you never saw is far from over.